Hello, everybody. Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. It's Monday, August the 16th, 2021. The year is moving right along, and there's turmoil on every corner today. There's a lot of things taking place today. One of the full intents of Making It Simple is to cause us to pause, to cause us to truly self-evaluate where we are right now in our spiritual life. I make no secret about that. I certainly have no shame about that. I believe that the messages and the lessons that are here that we talk about on a daily basis, 5 days a week, right here at Making It Simple, is to cause us to have that mirror moment. We need to look at that and evaluate and say, okay, where am I at? Where am I at? We can remember significant moments in time where we were at physically. Where we were actually literally standing, sitting, whatever, when you heard the news. Today, for example, August the 16th, 1977, 44 years ago, Elvis Presley died. It made headlines around the world. If you were alive during that time, as most of us from my age and up obviously were, you remember where you were, whether you were driving, whether you were working, whether you were in a living room somewhere playing a game, whatever, it doesn't matter. You remember, because it made national headlines. It was all over the place, everywhere. That this bigger than life figure, this musical icon, this rock and roll legend, whatever you want to call him, was gone. Roddy McDowell even later on had a song called The King Is Gone. All kinds of different things. 42 years old. At that time, I remember as a young kid, 8, 9 years old, whatever I was, thinking, wow, 42, man. That seemed like forever ago. Well, of course, I've passed that now. That ship has sailed, and you think, wow, that was not old. That was not old. Where were you during that time? Making It Simple, though, goes much deeper than a figure, a historical or pop culture or whatever we want to call them moment. While many things that have happened historically significant and such that has taken place in our lifetimes, they all have meaning to us in different ways. I think it most important right now, though, with the continual just dismantling, unraveling of the world around us, to stop, to take a moment, take a pause, take a breath, whatever, and say, where am I at right now? And I'm not talking about where you're sitting. I'm not talking about where you're viewing this broadcast. Where are you spiritually? You see, friends, everything that I do right here at Making It Simple is for one purpose, and one purpose only. That is to introduce you to the person of Christ, to make sure that without a question, you have a personal relationship with Him, that indeed you would accept His invitation to you to be a part of what He's planned and what He's placed before us, and that ultimately that would lead to not only a settlement in our eternity, but it makes our life better. It makes us better people. It gives us better character. It gives us better outlook. And we only lean on that. We don't lean on anything superficial. We don't lean on those things that really ultimately doesn't last. Because when we begin to have a foundational structure in other things, then we begin to depend on things that indeed may let us down, and in fact, will let us down. It causes us to have moments of blindness to where we truly don't see it that way, oftentimes until it's too late. You see, today many place their whole being in another person, and then that person dies, or that person leaves, that person lets you down. Many people place their foundation, their strength in a system, or in a legacy, or in this or in that, in a political affiliation, whatever, only to be disappointed. This is not to be overtly negative. This is not to say that we can't have, great dependency on certain things, or lenience, or friendship, or love. But is it what we base everything on? We can certainly like a lot of things, but we don't base our life on that. We don't base the fact of whether we're going to be able to get up and function on whether somebody else does or doesn't. We can't, because that in and of itself is not dependable. And we have to understand that. That's not being cold, mean, or cruel. That's fact, because life is inconsistent when it comes to all of those things. The only thing that remains the same is God. Period. We understand that. When I left you on Friday, we talked about the very familiar verse, "You'd know the truth, and the truth will make you free." Jesus is trying to explain to this group that he's addressing this very important message. But they didn't get it, because they refused to hear it. They didn't want to hear the truth. They didn't want anything to do with the truth, because the truth to them was what they determined. Fast forward to 2021, and we find the same thing, because the truth now oftentimes is a directed narrative from another source. And it's presented to tell you this is the truth and you can't question it. I mean, I just saw a thing just in the last 24 hours that said if you question anything, you could be labeled a terrorist. Imagine that, friends. You see, the truth that sets us free is one like I shared with you last week. It sets you free emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And within those things, there's no bondage anymore. Someone may take your freedom via all different types of reasons, or shenanigans, or whatever. But if you've surrendered your heart to Christ, that's the freest you'll ever possibly be, because nobody can take that away from you, no matter what. Jesus says you would know the truth, and the truth would make you free. But you see, they didn't want that, because to them, their truth was more important than the truth. They wanted to determine their future. They wanted to determine their power structure. They wanted to determine other people's lives and what the truth would be. They wanted to dictate the truth, create the truth. But you see, friends, Jesus is the truth. And that's where we have to get back to understanding that. So it tells us they answered him when he made this statement. This is verse 33. And they said, "We are Abraham's seed." You see, when they heard him say, "You would be free," they immediately went toward the thinking of being enslaved. They weren't thinking of mind, body, and soul, and in particular the mind and soul part. They weren't considering that at all. They said, "Hold on just a minute. We are from the lineage and the seed of Abraham. We've never been in bondage to any man. So why do you say you shall be made free?" So again, we see arrogance and we see ignorance, because they weren't going to listen to anything but their way. They didn't listen to what he was saying, therefore they didn't get what he was saying. And this is important today, that we hear this message, because what we're listening to absolutely directs our thoughts, the things that are pouring in. I've been on a lesson lately in several different, I've got so many different things that I'm able to teach in, all kinds of different levels of broadcast, as well as preaching on Sunday morning. And thinking has been really at the forefront of my messaging lately, because what we pour in, it absolutely directs what we do and how we act. These were unwilling to allow anything to come in but what they wanted. and it had to line up with what they said and what they agreed to be said, and nothing else was going to happen. So they said to him, how do you tell us this? How do you tell us we're going to be set free? We've never been slaves to anybody. I mean, we come from Abraham. That makes us above that. That makes us in a different place, a different air. You see, friends, they were leaning on privilege. They were looking at heritage and lineage. And they said, we've come from Abraham. I mean, we've never been slaves to anybody. What are you talking about being free? Why are you telling us about being free? We don't get that. We don't understand that. But you see, they weren't looking at this from a spiritual perspective. This is what we need to understand today, friends, is the spiritual perspective. Because if we're in bondage there, then the remainder of everything else that is going on is not working well. Because then we begin to lose hope. Many today have done that. They have lost all hope. All they see is darkness. They see no light at the end of the tunnel. They see no truth. They see nothing good. They have become completely enslaved in darkness. And they can't see a way out. Because their foundation has been placed in something beyond Christ, or someone beyond Christ. These folks that he's talking to, they didn't understand the spiritual side of this at all. And to be honest about it, they weren't looking for that. Because in their mind, they didn't need that. I've got it all figured out. I'm from Abraham. I don't need anything else. I am a Pharisee. I'm a leader. I'm a religious figure. I don't need any of that. You can't tell me anything. That in and of itself is a form of slavery. It is a form of bondage because you are locked into that place to where you are unwilling to hear anything, unwilling to be moldable, unwilling to be coachable or teachable. That is an unhealthy place to be. And many today, they absolutely suffer from this very same issue. Oftentimes you'll hear the statement, well, I'm a good person. I mean, I don't do this and I don't do that, so I'm good. I don't need anything else. But you see, friends, this is not about morals. Morals play a role. Don't get me wrong. You shouldn't be just run about and just do whatever kind of person. But that's not the basis of this. This is not, because even Jesus would later teach that the wicked of the wicked, the worst of the worst, can be a moral person in the sense that they'd be kind to their child, they'd be kind to their family, they would do good things. I've known serial killers, dealt with them, that were good to their kids. Not so much to everybody else, but they were good to their kids. They were good to their family. So there was even a level of morality there in the sense of, well, I don't have to be bad to everybody. So this is not about that. This is about faith, which is about commitment, which is about full surrender to Christ. You see, we could put it this way. Who owns your heart? Who owns your heart? Who's in control of that? What dictates what you do? Who dictates what you do? Again, it's what you pour in. That's what comes out. There's no way around that, friends. Anything beyond a full surrender to Christ, it leads us to captivity. And that can come in many, many different forms. Like this group we're seeing leaning on heritage and lineage and all these different things. Well, I'm this and I'm that, so I'm exempt from those things. No, none of us are. Later, I believe it's in the book of Colossians or Galatians, it says, but for the grace of God, but I. In other words, when we're looking at another situation and maybe saying, well, I mean, that could never be me. Don't say that. You don't know that. Here, these ones are being Not only sarcastic and foolish in their attitude, but they're in great denial that they need more. You see, because they had determined, I've already figured it all out. I have all the answers. Friends, that's a lie. Nobody's got all the answers. You know what? I teach this stuff about 7 times, 8 times a week. 5 times a week here on Making It Simple. I record another show on Friday. I have an opportunity to preach on Sunday. I teach again on Sunday afternoon. I have another broadcast on Sunday evening. I mean, I teach a lot. I don't say that to brag. It's an honor. It's a blessing that I get to do what I do. And I teach on Wednesday night too, if you want to add another one in. And again, I'm not saying that to brag. But even as much as I am in this Word, as much as I spend time doing this, I don't know it all. I've never figured it all out, nor will I, because it's not possible. It's beyond our human ability. But what I have learned is this: when you are moldable, when you are coachable, when you are teachable, that means I get me out of the way and say, yeah, I don't know. My oftentimes answer to people when they ask me a question, if I don't have the answer, I say, I don't know. But I'll find somebody who does. Or we'll search it out together. We will seek and we will find. But you see, seek is an action word. And if we're no longer willing to seek, then we're no longer willing to learn. And when we're no longer willing to learn, we really are of little use, to be honest with you. This group was considered leaders, but were they really leading? Were they really molding and shaping and helping others in their spiritual life? Absolutely not. Because they determined we already know everything. We've got it all figured out. You see, one of the dangers of ministry is a pastor or a minister or a priest or whatever they want to call them, all the different titles we've got, that has determined they've got it all figured out. They become arrogant. They become unapproachable. And ultimately, they don't become a very good shepherd because they themselves no longer have the willingness, and even in some capacity, in some ways, they've turned off their capacity to learn because, well, I've got it all figured out. Later in the book of Revelation, Jesus would rebuke the church for that. He'd say, you think you've got it all? In fact, you say you have need of nothing. I mean, you've got it all figured out? I don't think so. Here, they said unto him, why are you talking to us this way? I mean, don't you realize, basically what they're saying is, don't you realize how great we are? We don't need you. We don't need your instruction. We don't need your teaching. And we certainly don't need what you claim to be true because we're from Abraham. We don't need anything else. We got it all figured out. We've never been a slave to anybody. They were completely and utterly missing the point. And so Jesus, it tells us, answered them in verse 33. I say unto you, whosoever commits sin is a servant to the sin. So what is he explaining to them? Now we hear this word sin. That gets the hackles up on some people. And that gets it gives a connotation of, again, a moral failure. But we have to understand this goes so much deeper than that. You see, when he's letting them deeper into his heart and into his mission, what his purpose and intent is, the less they're willing to look, because it was like a mirror. Well, I don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that they're wrong. We naturally resist that. However, it's like the song, Andre Crouch song, if I'd never had a problem, I wouldn't know God could solve them. I wouldn't know what faith in God could do. In other words, if I didn't look in the mirror, I wouldn't see whatever it is that I need to see that maybe needs correcting. And that's not even just necessarily a cosmetic type issue. This is both literal and figurative as we understand that concept of that self-examination. Sometimes we just need to say, I'm not okay. And it's okay to not be okay. But what's not okay is to not admit that you're not okay and stay in that and think that it's just going to get better. And we're not even talking about just health matters. That's one component. But the other is even greater, our spiritual component. It doesn't just make itself right. You have to surrender your heart to Christ. In other words, you have to come to the conclusion there's something bigger than me. I can't drive this ship all by myself because I'm making a mess of it. There has to come to that place. They weren't there. They weren't willing to be there. So Jesus explains to them this. He says, sin. We need to understand that word. That word actually means miss the mark. We have to understand this. This is not just about a moral component. This is not about just being naughty or saying a bad word or looking at a naughty picture or watching a bad movie or saying a bad word. It goes so much deeper than that. It's not about even punching somebody in the nose or taking someone's life. It's so much deeper than that. Missing the mark of God. What is the mark of God? Holiness. Not perfection, holiness. In other words, representing God. How do we do that? Love God, love one another. That's what it comes down to. And their actions didn't show that to any side of that. They didn't love God because they did not love one another. They didn't love other people. They didn't care. It was all about them. And he says to this, whoever commits that sin, and again sin, missing the mark of God, becomes a servant of that sin. Why? Because it's captivating. It's enslaving. It pours power into desire. It has a draw. It says, just one more time. Just a little bit longer. Just a little bit more. One time won't hurt. It has that allure that just hangs on and hangs on and hangs on until then you can't get rid of it. It's almost like a tattoo. It's there. And every time you look at it, you see it. And there's seemingly nothing you can do about it when you allow it to consume you. And that's why he says, that one that you've done and what you've committed in this, you will become a servant to it until you know Jesus. Now, that's not a religious statement, friends. That's a fact. I have learned that in the most difficult manners over my lifetime. All because of me. I don't blame anybody. It's easy to blame other people. That's the society we have now. It's somebody else's fault. No, it's not. It's my fault. I did it because I let it happen. Sometimes things happen to us along the way that we didn't ask for. Other people do it. And while we can certainly cast blame on that, I have to hold me accountable if I keep holding on to it. I got to let it go because I can't let it control and run my life. He says here, it captivates, it takes control, and it remains in power unless we surrender to Christ. That's why we go back to that verse. He says, and you'll know the truth, and the truth will be what makes you free. It all ties together, friends. Whatever you may be struggling with today, and I don't know what that is, what you have to ask right now is, am I willing to continue to stay there, or am I going to do something about it? I've got the key to let me out of this jail cell or this cage or this contraption that I'm in. I have the key. I own it. It's mine. God gave it to me. But am I willing to put it in the lock and turn it? Am I willing to surrender? That's a big question, friends. I can tell you today, regardless of what you're fighting, good or bad, whatever's got control in your life, you've got the key. And that truth, it'll set you free. God bless you. I hope we've had a great time together today. I certainly have enjoyed bringing you this word, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow as we have another day of making it simple. God bless you. Have a great day, great evening, whenever you have a chance to listen to this. I look forward to hearing from you. And as always, as I try to say, if you need me, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to contact you if you have any questions about what we're doing here. I look forward to bringing you updates on all the ventures that I've got going on, the doors that God continues to bless me with, and open to share this truth. And friends, as we said, it will set you free. You take care.